thank you very much for being here with us this beautiful morning. Special thanks to the organizers for arranging beautiful weather on this Friday in beautiful Malta. I'm Georgi Chaltikyan. I'm professor and head of digital health at Deggendorf Institute of Technology in Germany. It's my pleasure to be moderating this panel. Well, artificial intelligence, I will not be breaking news if I say that artificial intelligence is the main promise, basically, of digital health. And this is excellently illustrated by the program of this show. We're here on the second day, and the show is titled MedTech. It is, in fact, about digital health, but we are like 80 or 90% of time we're talking AI. And this is obviously has its reason. Indeed, AI, ML, is perhaps the most important technology that will ensure this tectonic shift from the current paradigm, which is that of episodic, largely imprecise, mostly health system-based care, focusing more on curative, rehabilitative, and even palliative actions, much more than on preventive and promotive, to the new paradigm that we often refer to as 5P healthcare: predictive, preventive, participatory, individualized or personalized, and precision healthcare. And with your permission, I would like also to add even the sixth dimension to that, which is permanent, the sixth P. But should we be taking for granted that AI will be developing in the most efficient, equitable, ethical, and accountable way, or is going to require quite a lot of efforts by all of us, the digital health community? These and other questions will be answered and will be discussed at today's panel, titled the AI Clinician. And it is an absolute pleasure and honor to invite our distinguished panelists, Fran, Ayalasomayajula. And this is your challenge for this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Try to pronounce her last name. Fran, welcome to this stage. Thank you for being with us. Then we have Oliver Rockall. Welcome. And we have Dr. Gnaneshwer Jadav. Welcome to the panel. So dear panelists, why don't we first go with a quick round of introduction. And I would ask you to tell us and the audience a little bit about what is your main area, what is your main focus, and your main passion. And with your permission, we'll start, Fran, with you. And let's try to keep this to, let's say, 2 minutes introduction.
Sure, I'm happy to. Hello, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Fran Ayalasomayajula. I am the president of �၀𝐞𝐝, which is a global social impact organization. Our faculty represents leading institutions across the globe, representing 4 continents and 7 countries. For us, our mission is to really improve the overall experience of healthcare for both patients as well as providers. Now, that's a big mission, and in doing so, we narrowed it down to focus on 3 primary areas. The first of which is looking at research and education. The second one, thought leadership, being on forums such as this one. And the third is to take those research findings and incorporate those into innovations. And from that, we have 3 main areas of innovations, or specialty focus areas. The first of which is maternal infant health. The second one is working with older adult populations. And the third is providing support for workforce wellness amongst multidisciplinary care teams. And so it's an honor to be able to talk with you today, and many of the examples that I will reference in what we discuss will be centered around, in particular, maternal care. As everyone knows, that globally, the #1 indicator of a wealth of a country is the health of its women.
Thank you very much, Fran. Oliver, would you like to tell us a bit about what you do at Tailoraid?
Of course, with pleasure. Tailoraid has had a bit of a long story. We started off trying to predict side effects which are going to happen in patients. So with a clinical decision support software where we can empower doctors in taking the right decisions at the moment of prescription. And we did that by leveraging machine learning. This has pivoted slightly, and it's also why it's my pleasure to be on this panel about the AI Clinician. because that gave us a lot of insights into how AI is managed by doctors, how AI is seen by hospitals, by healthcare practitioners. So the idea has expanded quite a bit now to seeing how we can accompany patients in the best, most efficient and healthiest way across the whole care pathway, so from prevention to the consultation to the follow-up, and seeing how we can empower, support the patients themselves, but also doctors in helping their patients and helping the patient experience. So in short, that's what Tailoraid does.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Oliver. Gnaneshwer, Dr. Jadav, please introduce what you're doing.
Thank you so much. So my name is Gnaneshwer Jadav. So we are working on the Akeno health. So basically what we are doing is trying to improve the gut health. So as we know that the gut microbiome, we have more than 100 trillions of different bacteria, fungi, yeast, lives in our stomach. And most of our food processed in the gut microbiome, first eaten by the gut microbiome, the metabolites released by the gut microbiome is our energy source. And many of the metabolic diseases depends on the food or diet we eat and also the gut microbiome diversity. If we are keeping healthy our gut microbiome, we are healthy and happy. So our approach to develop the artificial intelligence technology to see the diversity of the gut microbiome by scanning the skin. There is a link between the gut microbiome and our skin, which reflects on the developing the metabolic diseases, and also the hormonal levels, which is released from the brains. So we are connecting all these three to use the artificial intelligence technology. But we are also including two other parameters, such as the electronic health records and also the real health vitals through the wearables, which are connecting all the links together to see the diversity of the gut microbiome and improve the health.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So before we proceed to the questions, I'd like to invite also everybody in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, should you have any question to any of the panelists, please feel free to indicate, to let me know, and we'll be coming back and taking your questions with pleasure. So Fran, why don't we start with this question? We know that there is already more than 500 AI algorithms approved by the US FDA. I guess it's the latest figure is either 512 or 515 perhaps. And here's a question. Is it already becoming mainstream, at least in the US health system, or is it not? And if it's not, why is it not yet getting there? Why is it not yet mainstream?
Right, so it's not mainstream in any market, although there are areas where we're beginning to see it, so you have to break it down by specialization. For example, in radiology, we know that for diagnosis of conditions with the leveraging of imaging technology, that is being deployed and actualized. But in many other settings it isn't, and that's consistent across the globe. And the principal reason for this is the low digital literacy rate amongst clinicians themselves. That's not an area they're trained in, just like clinicians really aren't trained in things like clinical empathy. And for those newer students who are coming out, what's amazing for them is while they are beginning to see a restructuring of their curriculums, those curriculums that are incorporating digital technology put them in a great position to be able to apply it, but yet when they step into residency, the institutions where they're practicing aren't adopting it. And it would be I'd be out of time to continue on. I'll let others perhaps have an opportunity to comment.
Thanks a lot, Fran, and thanks also for being mindful of time. Oliver, what is the AI clinician to you? I'll explain a little bit the question. We know that, just like Fran mentioned, talking about radiology, we all know that 70 to 75% of those algorithms that are already basically working, that are embedded in the fabric of healthcare, are indeed radiology. So are we really talking about a sophisticated image recognition software, or is AI clinician well above and beyond that?
That's, of course, a very good question. To me, I think the AI clinician is really about empowering doctors in taking good decisions. And I think that's a key difference as to what people usually think of when we talk about the AI clinician as some sort of all-seeing computer that can treat you whatever happens and give medication to you, etc. To me, when you look at radiology, when you look at sectors where it is well vested in AI, you can see dermatology as well with skin recognition softwares. They are all built around the aspect that you need to empower doctors in taking good decisions and helping them take their good decisions. Doctors spend years taking extremely complicated decisions every day, and up until AI, nobody was learning from these complicated decisions they take. And I think that is exactly the kind of key value that the AI clinician is. It's a clinician which is learning from the difficult decisions he takes every day by using and leveraging the AI he has at hand. I kind of wear two hats with Tailoraid, but I'm also a business development analyst for PACMed, which is a company in the Netherlands looking at prediction of ICU readmission in patients. And what we see is that the ICU is really one of the most complicated areas to take decisions due to the comorbidity of patients, how many variables these patients have, the beepings, the machines, everything. And I think from what I see at the conference and in general in healthcare, that is where AI has value. It's supporting doctors, it's helping doctors. So yeah, to summarize, for me, the AI clinician is someone who harnesses, a doctor who harnesses these kind of learning points through data for himself. I think we need to be wary of the fact that thinking of this all-seeing TARS robot like in Interstellar is not something we'll be seeing, at least in our lifetimes. So yeah.
Will we be ever seeing it?
I think a lot needs to change before then. And it's not only about technical feasibility. I was assisting talks yesterday about that AI is actually not even that intelligent, actually. It's very much just
absolutely.
It's very much a fancy probability software.
It's a fancy term.
Exactly. So so much needs to be done before then, not only in terms of technical feasibility, but also in terms of changing the social view on AI. I think all of us here are very biased in AI and love AI, of course. But I think a vast majority of the population has real problems adopting AI or accepting that they're just going to be talking to a doctor. I think, like Fran said, a doctor is just more than taking decisions. It's also support, psychological support system, and empathy.
Fran, you want to add something to that? Yeah.
I'm not entirely convinced. And the reason for that from a consumer perspective is the greatest adoption of AI technology is in people's homes. It's the robotic vacuum cleaner. That is AI technology. I think one of the elements here is that when the technology works, we don't call it AI, we just call it whatever it is. And in relation to clinicians, there was a time when we would monitor the fetus and it would be hands-on womb, right? And we still do hands-on womb today, right? 26 weeks, we're counting kicks to make sure that the baby is doing well. But the reality is we don't stop there. We use sonograms and other technologies that aid us in what we're doing, and nobody questions it. So I think more so than saying the AI clinician sometime in the future is just to say the clinician, and that AI itself will be as, insignificant in some ways and so much integrated that it will be like the lights in the room for us, basically, right? We don't think about the lights turning on and off.
Right, working in the background. That's why we are basically, we're speaking about digital health, let's say. Probably a decade later, it will be just health, without even digital. Gnaneshwer, I have another question to you, if I may. So you worked a lot with commercializing the AI technology with companies, with startups, and you have quite an experience there. Here's a question for you. Is it open source or is it patented proprietary algorithms that is going to make the maximal difference? Aren't we going into the same direction as the early developments in the health information technology with fragmented market, solutions not talking to each other, with more than 200 interoperability, semantic interoperability systems, just only parts of UMLS, Unified Medical Language System. So are we better with open source, open data, open source algorithms? Is it going to be more trusted by both clinicians and patients? Is it going to be more explainable if we promote open source, like there is a recent initiative? I'm quite sure that many in this room know about it. Or you think we should go the same way of, patented algorithms, commercialization, to spur innovation? What is your take on that?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. So what I think is when a pharmaceutical company or a biotechnology company produces a drug molecule, they have the specialized team to train the doctors about the new drug molecules, explaining why this clinical trial is successful in animal models and also in the patients, and what is the efficacy of this drug molecule, and how you can treat the patients and so on. When it comes to the technology, AI is now in the big market. So are we training the doctors as same way as we are training the drug molecules? Of course, they are not coming from the technology side point of view. As the Fran mentioned, that the adaptation and the literacy is the big issue, getting to know the technology. So do we have any teams to train the doctors as we train any drug molecules? Even though they are in the same field, it's easy for them to understand the new drug molecule and why it's very efficacy is good, better than the other drugs. But the question comes to the training the doctors and the literacy. So as you mentioned, the two key points. One is the commercialization of the patented and also the open source. There are advantages and disadvantages of those. So if you have the open source, it's a possibility to make the mistakes, not only from the data point of view, but also the technology point of view. But if you have the patented, it's very responsible application, are very responsible for the companies or for the people who are building those technology. If there are any mistakes or errors comes in the implementation, is going to be solved by those people who are taking.
Sure, but if it is open source, then the entire community can participate in that and probably correct those mistakes in it.
Yeah, it's also possibility they can correct, but it's the responsibility is little, a dilution of the responsibility comes in the open source compared to the patented. That's what I feel.
Fran, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think the responsibility thing stands regardless of it, whether it's private or IP or whether it's open. What we mainly see, and we have plenty of examples of this in low and medium resource countries, is where open source is being adopted, fantastic, but not having the resources to be able to support and implement is a challenge. So it's not enough to simply say that we're going to have open source. What I appreciate the most is maintain your IP, but make sure you have a decoder that enables you to communicate with everyone else, and that you stay consistent and compliant with regulation that necessitates that your data doesn't remain with you, but that it's shared in accordance with what the regulations or the laws of the country are. That's what's important.
Exactly. That brings us to the to probably another question. How do we build, or how do we implement further, or what efforts are needed to engage more global communities? Because, and Fran, but this is a question basically to each of the panelists. Fran, we know that you've been very instrumental in building, this global connected healthcare community. What do we need? How do we need to make more, to engage more, especially low and middle income countries? And we know yesterday we spoke in one of the panels and elsewhere, we're speaking about data bias, we're speaking about equity, we're speaking about inclusion. Do we need to do more in that regard? What do you think?
We absolutely do, and I think that one of the roads to this begins with the technologists ourselves, right? That when we are designing that it's a universal design and that there's parity inclusion, that the populations that we are developing for are active participants, not just when you have a proof of concept and you want someone to give you a verbal testimony that you've done great work, but that they are actually engaged in overall those exercises, so that essentially the involvement needs to come from the ground up and from the top down. So many examples, like with community health workers and doulas and ASHWA workers, these individuals who are on the ground in places in the world where many of us aren't able to even access, are in need of the technology, and they're the most welcoming of it. But in order to gain their trust, it necessitates that you bring them in when you have the idea, not just in the end when you want to try to justify that what you're doing is for the greater good.
Thank you very much. We're running quite quickly out of time, and what I'd like us to do now is probably to go with a round of last remarks or key takeaway messages, each of the panelists, and I would like us to focus on the following question. Imagine or try to tell us, quite briefly, try to keep it under 1 minute, where do you see or how do you see the AI clinician 20 years from now? Gnaneshwer, you want to start?
Yeah, so what we are at now is using the AI as a medical help tool. But what I think is we can use the AI as an actionable tool. We can detect the molecular level and also the clinical level through the cross-functional collaboration, not only the developing team of artificial intelligence, but also involving doctors and other healthcare professionals to develop the future technology, which can detect the prevention of the diseases, but not as a medical tool to help in the last stages. So that's my...
Thank you very much. Oliver, where do you see AI in 20 years? By the way, are we at the peak of this Gartner cycle now with AI? Is it going down, let's say, in 10 years from now? Or do you think we haven't reached the peak of the hype?
Well, it's a good question. It's a question I've been asking myself this whole weekend as well. We're talking with everyone. I don't know if we're at the peak. I think the next 10 years are very much going to be focused around harnessing data and how do we manage data and how do we help hospitals collect data properly. I think we've had now 10 years of end products, fantastic AIs that work, etc. But for PACMed, for example, the integration process for one hospital is 6 months. So 6 months in cleaning data, collecting data, helping the hospital manage their data to eventually launch the AI. So the AI clinician in 20 years, I don't think is going to be extremely different. It's just going to be harnessing all the solutions we're thinking of perfectly through the continuous work we've been doing in the next 20 years in managing data silos, helping, like Fran was saying about, interconnected data, the health data space becoming something actually real. And I think, as a last remark as well, quickly, that I do see or expect, let's say, a high uptick in preventative and predictive AI before. I think, in a general sense, as a society, we're moving to more predictive medicine and preventative medicine rather than figuring out the best end-of-life scenario.
Fantastic. Great comments. Thank you very much, Oliver. Fran, are we going to have this valley of disillusionment, or are we going to skip it and then prove that the model has exceptions? Where do you see the AI clinician in 20 years from now?
I am so excited, and first off, I'm super excited about what Oliver described and what has been described as well from my other colleague, because I really truly believe that preventative is the first fundamental low-hanging fruit for us, and we should all be celebratory, right? We should all be celebrating that opportunity. But I also think that if it's 20 years from now, it's not going to be called AI. It's kind of like the way somehow we leaped from VR, which was about, a 30-year journey, right? 30 years, I mean, it's been around a while, and somehow now we're in the metaverse, right? Regardless of whether it's using the terminology appropriately or not. But my point is that 20 years from now, it's not going to be referred to as AI. It's going to be taught to as referenced as something entirely different. But the notion that it will continue to help us in being able to do connected, well-communicated, well-coordinated care, that is definitely on the horizon.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, those were Fran Ayalasomayajula, Oliver Rockall, and Dr. Gnaneshwer Jadav. And a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.